28 will also be a fun year because we'll be gearing up for another election, and it'll be really interesting to see how hopefully it'll be a new administration either way, right? And how the priorities will then continue to change over, and whether or not people who, we talked about the death of aid and development, whether or not that can come back in a future state. And so 28 will be a really interesting year because there will be a lot of open road ahead of the United States. And if something doesn't go kinetic in China, then there'll be a lot of open road in front of the world. And it'll be really interesting to kind of see the choices. You talked about the forks in the road, but that'll be a fork. 28's a fork for us, and to see which direction we go. Yeah, it'll be curious.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Future of GovCon. This is a weekly podcast to bring together experts from across the industry and look at what's happening today and how it's going to impact the future of our industry. I'm Jake Frazer. I'm the owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. In leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I get to talk to influencers every day. C-suite executives, board members, growth leaders, top government officials, military flag officers. And on this podcast, what we're doing is we're bringing in these experts from AI, from space, from medical, from logistics, from engineering. And we're sitting down and talking about what's happening in their specific area of the industry and how it will impact the future. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey, everybody. It's Jake Frazer. Welcome to the Future of GovCon podcast. We're joined today by none other than Andy MacWilliams. Welcome, Andy.
Hey, Jake. How's it going? Long time no see.
Exactly. Yeah. So you woke up today, you're doing a podcast with your boss. How do you feel about that?
Excited. I'm a man of few words often, so I'm interested to kind of see how this goes. But I never lack opinions, I don't think. So I'm interested in seeing where this goes.
Few words is not what I think of when I think of Andy MacWilliams. Good. All right. Yeah. Hey, so look, this is all about getting together with people who have been around the industry that are experts and talking about the future of government contracting. It's an industry that you've been in a long time, that I've been in a long time. So there's fertile ground for a great conversation. I think the overall hypothesis is, everybody's focused on today. Everybody's in what I call their proverbial foxhole, digging away, improving their position, and they don't get a chance to look at what's going on out there in the battlefield. And week after week, we want to bring in experts in specific areas across GovCon and talk about what's going on today and how that's shaping the future of the industry. Does that make sense?
Great. Yeah.
So, yeah, I know a lot about you, but I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about, and I bet I'm going to learn some stuff today about your background. I've been in your house. I've been in your backyard. I petted your dog. I played with your kid, but I met your wife. But it's a good chance to learn a little bit more about Andy MacWilliams, and also for our audience to hear about you, because you are very prevalent in the industry and very visible. So, yeah, first of all, start off, talk about how you started out, how you grew up. I know you have a little bit of a unique background compared to most GovCon people.
Yeah. So I don't, and in that I have no military background whatsoever. I think so many people who get into the industry transition out of prior service, which is great. We're so thankful for those service members. That's just not me. So I grew up in a small place in New England. I came to DC in the summer of 2000 for college.
New England,
and I had
Vermont, or New England, Vermont, right?
Yeah, Vermont.
Real New England stuff.
Yeah. Cowtown. And I wanted to be in a bigger place, so I came to Washington, D.C., and in August of 2000, that's 25 years ago this month, and I have never lived anywhere else since August of 2000. 4 years of school down here. It's that time was pre-financial burst. The financial market crashes in 2008, and I think the economy was just in a different place. You graduated from college, and I had 3 or 4 different opportunities that were available to me. I don't think that college graduates experience the same thing these days. But
especially on the job years, right? Especially this week.
Oh God, yeah. My degree is entirely worthless. I'm a lotto winner many times over here. Yeah, so I took a job in 2004, 2005 with a company called USIS, which was doing OPM investigations for the federal government as a contractor. So I've only ever worked for government contractors or for, B2B outfits like Precision.
How'd you get that job? Did you apply for it, or did someone come get you? Did you know somebody? How'd you get that
Great
job?
question. Yeah, so the co-captain of the rugby team had graduated before I had and was working for that company and got me an interview without an application, and away we went. He is still a friend, Adam Lurie, who's the CEO and owner at Nexus. It's an AI company that's here. And again, I think a theme you're going to hear throughout the podcast is that as big as defense seems and government contracting seems to many, it's really a small community here in DC. And a lot of the people that you pick up, they stay with you forever. Adam got me my first job. He was a groomsman in my wedding. He's a client today and a friend and somebody who, we have a fantasy football draft 2 Thursdays from now. So that's kind of how the industry
Large community of you rugby guys too, right?
There is, yeah. Stay away from us if you can. But honestly, USIS, so OPM investigations, and a lot of people will know this, if you have a security clearance that's granted by the federal government, then typically about 85% of the time that's investigated and adjudicated by OPM. And so they use contractors to go in and do the face-to-face interviews with you to go over all of your 7 years of work history and your 7 years of residence. Go out to meet your employer, meet your coworkers, get your job records, your neighbors, your friends, things like that. And that was a really cool job. It was great. In a different time, the company had cars for everybody. So I had a company issued car I got to drive around the region with, right?
Do you remember what?
It was a Jeep Liberty for a long time. Yeah, Jeep Liberty. In DC traffic, I got rear-ended a few times and it just bent the tire on the back of the Liberty, and just drove away.
Yeah.
Just got the insurance and drove away. It was great. But that was a really awesome job, and I got to go a lot of cool places. I've met the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court working an OPM case, John Roberts.
Who's that? Oh, Roberts. Okay.
Was John Roberts at the time, still is, obviously. I got to go into the Oval Office twice in 2 different administrations, late in the Bush administration and then early in the Obama administration. Yeah, so it was really a neat job, and I had an opportunity there early on to run a team of investigators out of 55 teams across the country. We had the second highest producing team, and we were just kind of humming there for a long time. It was a good gig. It was work from home before that was even a thing. We had a satellite office, but you never had to go, and I'd see my boss maybe every other week and was just kind of cranking out.
You can say now, what was the craziest thing you saw when you're out on the street doing interviews?
I did have some hairy moments doing residence checks in DC, a couple that made me uncomfortable. I opened the gate one time to go knock on a door, and the gate kind of slammed behind me real quick because I had a spring on it, and this Rottweiler took off the porch at me, and I had to jump the fence, and all my stuff went everywhere. But honestly, it's also a reminder too that people in general are very kind. People want to be kind and want to be helpful. And so when you call and say, hey, I'm working a background investigation on your neighbor or your coworker, somebody you worked with 5 years ago, the majority of people want to help out in those instances, especially here in DC when that concept is just, something everybody's familiar with. And it was a really good gig. They get a lot of college kids, and they get a lot of kids that are late, a lot of folks that are late career, kind of post, corporate environment, but nearing retirement. And it's a really great job for somebody who's in that kind of space in their career.
I guess from a GovCon perspective, that's a good foundation. You weren't in the military. You weren't necessarily in the government. You were kind of an augmentee of the government, but also gave you a chance to see. I mean, a lot of what we deal with has to do with security clearances, and so understanding the actual mechanics of that must come in handy.
Yeah, and just a crash course in all of the acronyms and everything that sort of trails throughout the industry. Yeah, it was awesome, and it's not specific to one particular department. It obviously being here in DC, it's heavy on DoD. when I started, not to date myself, when I started, DHS didn't exist. DHS was it basically, Ridge had not become the Homeland Security secretary or was about to. So it was just a different time. And so got to go into, where I was living in the city at the time. USDA was in my neighborhood, DOE was in my neighborhood, FAA was in my neighborhood, and I could actually walk to those. So, and then jump on the metro and go to the Pentagon. And I would probably go to the Pentagon. I probably went 2 days a week for 5 years. It was really, really a cool gig, and picked up a couple little things while I was there. Because there are different types of investigations that are out there for citizenship and immigration, some other folks, a little bit of the classified stuff. So, it was great. And
Start out as a background investigator, knocking on doors. And then what was your next step?
So I was in Chicago on July 4th of 2011, and I was getting ready to watch the fireworks, and I got a call from somebody at corporate. And they said, hey, we are a subcontractor on this thing in Africa. We need a couple of people to go. Swear to God, we need a couple of people to go. And you're going to be there probably 6 weeks. The details are a little fuzzy, and we need to know right now if you can go. And so I put my phone to my shoulder. I looked at my wife and I said, hey, it was somebody I trusted at corporate. And I said, hey, there's this thing. And, and she said, why don't you go do it? And so I spent 3 months that summer in Uganda and Kenya, mostly in Uganda, recruiting and vetting Ugandans for U.S. State Department work on a WPS task order in Basra, Iraq.
Wow. My brother had that same experience with a TV show called Want to Go Fishing. He got stopped on the mall in D.C., and it's where they walk up to you and say, do you want to go fishing? You have to say right on the spot, yes or no. And he was with his in-laws and wound up definitely leaving to go fishing. So,
but what can you fish? You can't fish for anything here. It's just nasty catfish.
They went down to Costa Rica. I went to Costa Rica, went bone fishing or something. And it's all on TV. I have the episodes up there. Nice. So it's funny how in life you hit these forks in the road, and you don't realize it at the time. It's going to put you on a whole different trajectory. And it sounds like that's what happened to you.
Absolutely. And then we got there, a little team of Americans working, staying at the hotel and working at this house every day. And our PM was from South Africa, and he was working with the prime at the time. And he said one night at dinner, hey, when this project wraps up in, 4 weeks, they're probably going to hire one person full time off of this team, so just keep that in mind.
Right.
And about 5 minutes later, I told everybody at dinner, I said, you can forget about it. It's going to be me. I had no doubt in my mind that I was going to just grind, until that I was the only choice. And that's exactly.
Was it the rugby? Was it the rugby connection with the South African?
It was not. We worked. I mean, we had days it was 30 hours straight. If we were doing a large deployment off the airfield, you'd be at the office at 6 a.m. You wouldn't get back to the office because the plane took off at 4 a.m. You wouldn't get back till 10 o'clock noon the next day. And that was routine, and just pound caffeine, and I had this little tiny travel laptop that I did everything off of, and it had an orange stick. It was sort of Wi-Fi on the go, and we'd be on the bus, we'd be on the airfield, and I would just be banging out on my computer. And I wasn't going to let somebody outwork me, because I knew that was where it was headed next.
The one thing you can control. Awesome. Yep. I think I have a picture of you. It was back pre-beard, right?
Yep, pre-beard, yes. In Jinja, which is the start, people don't realize the Nile it runs south to north, and it starts on a lake in Uganda in a place called Jinja. So I've got a picture of me from the mouth at the start of the Nile.
To our audience, if you hit me up, I'll send you that picture. Andy thought about it. All right, good. So another fork in the road, right? You so tell us how that you went down that path.
Yeah, so I came back, and I had been working remotely for the entire start of my career. At that point, it was, 6 years, I guess. And then I had to adjust to 5 days in the office, 7 to 4, that kind of thing. So that's an adjustment, especially when you're, as you know, Jake, when you're somebody who perhaps has a bit of a counterculture streak, perhaps, or anti-authority streak, like I do, maybe. I've been accused of that on occasion. But that was a really neat group. They had a little bit of everything in the management team. They had prior military. They had prior sort of State Department civilians. All sorts of different types of people that were working on this project, and it was great. And at the start of it, I was for a company called Global Security. At the start of it, I was just doing foreign nationals, and honestly, that's almost 15 years now of recruiting foreign nationals. Something that is near and dear to my heart. Treating them in a way that they should be treated, treating them like any other potential employee that's coming in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in 2011, that was not necessarily the ethos that every company took when they approached recruiting foreign nationals. So that company, Global, went through a couple of changes. I wound up at a company called Olive Group doing the exact same thing. Olive Group, kind of one of the original security providers that's was in the Middle East. Yep. And focused really on oil and gas and non-U.S. customers, Ministry of Japan, UK MOD, those kind of folks. I was there doing foreign national recruitment, started to do a little bit of U.S. recruitment out of that too. We had maybe 300 foreign nationals and 10 U.S. guys. So, mixing it up a little bit. They got bought by a large outfit. They got bought by private equity and then smushed in with a couple other large security providers called Academy and Triple Canopy. And that all came together. And then later Centera came in and created what is now called Constellus. And I spent nearly a decade there and always had foreign nationals, but sort of started to pick up other recruitment as I just outlasted some of the other folks who came and went.
That's where we met, I think.
That's right.
In your small office there in, I think it was in Reston, matter of fact.
Yep.
Back in the day.
Yep.
So you've been on the talent side of government contracting, it sounds like. If you count investigations, which I would, part of the whole recruiting talent process, that's been your whole career. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, 21 years now.
Okay, and now you work with Precision Talent Solutions, a company I'm very fond of. Talk a little bit about the transition from a big company or a bigger company into a company that's smaller and very focused on a specific slice of the talent challenge.
Yeah, so before I do that, the reality is, Afghanistan closed for contractors abruptly in August of 2001. And I had two people that I call when I needed advice professionally. And one of them was you. And I called you and I said, hey, I'm looking for my next thing. I had a couple of bites elsewhere. And you said, do you really want to go do that again? And I thought about it. I said, no, I really don't. And you were like, well, why don't you come join up with me? We'll see how it goes. And that's now 4 years. And it's right. Been an opportunity for a lot of personal growth and professional growth, and really starting to feel like I'm hitting my stride a little bit too. So just 4 years in. So just appreciate, back to it being a small community here, you got to rely on those people that are the first phone call. And you were one of the first phone calls I made after that. So yeah, just appreciative of the opportunity.
Where do you think this passion for people and talent comes from? Is it something from your past? Is it something that happened to you? Like where does that come from?
I do think that USIS and OPM investigations was a great learning ground for what I didn't even know was gonna come. And you hear me sometimes, I tell people what makes me good at recruiting is that I'm a really good listener. I'm actually bad at doing this. I'm bad at talking about myself, really bad at it. And being an OPM investigator, it is all listening and listening for the things that you're going to pull on next. And probably for somebody who's not necessarily always an extrovert, you got to go out and meet. I think the metric for them is something like 60 appointments a week. And so that's typically 60 people that you're meeting with, that are different. And so I think that's just a really good injection into, the skill sets that are needed to be successful in talent. But the other thing that's neat when you get to DC is that, and people have to understand too, that Washington that you see on CNN and DC, those are two separate things.
Yeah.
DC is actually, there's a lot that it's happening in terms of community here. And so for me, I do think that community is a passion of mine. And one of the things I like about working for a small business as opposed to a large business is that we have the opportunity, to build that community around us, build it internally to our team, but also sort of select the kind of customers and the kind of work, quite frankly, that we want to be doing. And we don't have, beauty is we don't have to do anything. We get to choose the things we work on. Right. And that is just such a privilege at any stage of your career.
Absolutely. I think, and it is coming from the right spot. You can't take a class in being passionate about people and being empathetic. That's just something that I think some of it is hard coded in your genes and probably comes in your family and has developed, but it's obviously clear. Let's switch gears a little bit. I mean, you're a history major. Let's look back to 2015. What do you think in the last decade, because this will inform what we're going to talk about in the future, the last decade, what do you think has been the biggest change that you've seen across the GovCon industry?
Yeah. So 2015, we're sort of on the backside of what we could call the second bubble burst, perhaps, when, we kind of saw everything get hot in 02, 03, 04, cools off a little bit. It gets hot again, in 09, 10, 11, and then it really does start to cool off a little bit. We do start to see facilities overseas start to reduce. And the rates, as with all things, it's a supply and demand economy. So when you have fewer jobs available, you can drop the rate. And so I think at that point, a lot of defense customers or defense contractors in particular start to reevaluate, are we in the right service lines? Do we need to diversify our service lines? Where do we go from here? I think it's a really interesting parallel because there we are again in 2025 as parts of the industry. And look, you and I here on the podcast, but also, when we get together, when nobody's around, we don't talk politics. So that's not what I'm doing here. But there are segments of the industry that are fundamentally changed and probably will never come back in the way that we understood them previously. And I do think that is very much a parallel to some of the things that we saw in the 2015 timeframe. Good businesses are understanding how to outmaneuver those market changes.
Yeah, we're seeing it goes in cycles, another major shift in priorities. And I think you're right. About 10 years ago, there was a kind of a reshuffling of the deck. So the things that are happening today, let's look at today. It's been a busy year. I keep saying that I think Q1 was I'm talking about calendar year Q1, not fiscal. Calendar year Q1 was kind of the shock and awe. New administration coming in always brings in change. Q2, kind of the dust settling, priorities being shifted. In Q3, I think the priorities are becoming clear and people are trying to line up around those priorities. What do you see happening right now that you think is going to have some of the biggest impact on the future of the industry?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are predicting doom and gloom. It's easy to do that, especially with what's happened this year. But the truth of the matter is that the defense budget for 2025 was just shy of $900 billion, about $895 billion. And for 2026, it's going up about 13%. The Homeland Security budget probably will see something like a 7-ish% increase for 2026. And so less won't be happening. More will be happening. It will just be happening differently and in different places. And again, the beauty of being with a small business is that, we can go chase that a little easier. And obviously we do business to business, work, but even contractors that can see the trends coming and have the right vehicles can go approach federal customers in the right spaces where they know the money is going to be spent.
You may not agree with where the money's going or where it went away from. I think that's everybody's individual opinion. But it's definitely change, and it's clear. It's clear priorities, and you can just recite them off the top of your head. And it's also having an impact not just on the U.S. government, but on allies and NATO and adversaries as well. So how do you think these clear changes in priorities that are happening today are impacting spending, defense, diplomacy, foreign policy, aid and development outside of the U.S. government?
I think everybody, one of the things that we're probably not talking about enough is the need to reinvest in the United States in industrial manufacturing. It's, we have been talking, I think it was 3 years ago, we were in Pristina, Kosovo, and they were already then talking about opening up munitions plants to make sure that there were enough everything from 9 mil rounds to 155 and everything in between. And here we are now 3 years later, and you can hear the demand signals from our army, but from countries who we provide munitions to, that they're running short. And so at some point, defense companies in the U.S. are going to have to get serious about reinvesting in manufacturing, because as cool as all the cyber and cloud stuff is, and it's important, there are still things that have to go boom, and we're not really sort of focused on that. And I think perhaps even Europe might even be ahead to a degree on some of those reinvestments in the hard things that are required to run a military.
Yeah, I think, well, I would say my opinion is Europe's probably further along on the manufacturing than they are on the services side. But we'll see. So we got this kind of a reshoring, bringing things back, which does make sense. Talk a little bit about what's happening today in the context of our allies, where they're having to make investments.
Some of the innovation and creativity that we're seeing in Ukraine, quite frankly, on both sides, but by the Ukrainians, let's stay there for a minute, in terms of their UAVs, is just unreal. And I think it's been inspirational to a degree in the U.S. market. And we're starting to see all of these pop-ups and small companies throughout the United States, finding ways to invent and innovate new technology, autonomous vehicles, etc. But that's just one system that's over there. And so, Europe is in an interesting place because all of the countries are using different platforms that are acquired from elsewhere. And some standardization probably is long overdue. I'll be interested to see if NATO starts to talk about. They've obviously increased to 5% of GDP. One of the things, if you're going to spend more money as an organization, this is any organization, so, and certainly one as critical as NATO, why not do that smartly? And why not invest in a standardized platform so that the same rounds are going into the same weapon systems, that you're flying the same things? And so I do think we'll probably see a trend towards that for them as well.
Absolutely. They got to figure out, the Europeans have got to figure out how to get on the same shit music and get rid of some of their nationalist manufacturing and preference for their own brands. They got to get unified if they have any hope of being able to scale going forward. Let's go back. I still want to focus on now and talk a little bit about what do you see happening in the kind of the talent landscape. This is a year of change of priorities, completely, agencies being shut down, budgets going up in other areas, new administration, a new way of making decisions, allocating budgets, spending money. So how do you see the talent landscape right now in our industry? What's happening now? What's happening this year?
A lot of people looking for jobs right now, right? And what's interesting about that, and I do a lot of content around this particular topic. What's really interesting about that is that I think some people are struggling to translate what they used to do and what they want to do to what the available opportunities are in the marketplace. And one of the things I write about sometimes is the need to make it easy on a hiring team. A recruiter oftentimes, this is mostly for rank and file folks, mid-career to early career, something in between. Most of the time, a recruiter has got a little chart on their desk. And I know this because I ran a large 60-person recruiting team for the better part of 10 years. So they've got a little chart on their desk and they pop open a resume and they go, okay, I need to find these 6 things in there. And if they can't find all 6 of those things, boom, you go to the bin and they go to the next one. And right now, when you're looking at jobs where a lot of ATSs, a lot of applicant tracking systems that HR teams use, they'll close a job when they get a certain number of applications. So they'll open a job on Monday and it'll close when it's got 500 applications because they assume that they've got whatever they need in there. A lot of jobs are closing same day. So you have a recruiter who gets 500 resumes one day. And what do they do with that? They get their little matrix out and they're looking for all 6 and go from there. And so I think it's really important that you look at a job description. If you're out there in the market trying to get a job, you look at the job description and then turn around and look at your resume and go, I need to make sure that A maps to B, and that I make this as easy as possible for a recruiter who probably doesn't know much about you and what you do and have done historically. So make it real simple for them. So that's kind of mid to early career, I would say, what's happening in the marketplace right now.
It's a dynamic time, and I don't know how you've gone without saying AI yet. I'm proud of you for not, but it's certainly having an impact, and I think that the market is changing, and I think that the way business development will be done or is done today, but it's not being done right because I think people are still doing it the old way, is changing. And it's a massive shift in the talent space right now that we're watching, and this is going to have an impact on the future. Let me ask one more thing before we go forward, because you've been around the block. We had COVID, right? We had COVID. It seemed like just yesterday, but it was quite some time ago. And companies obviously had to go remote, and we've always been remote. But a lot of companies went remote, and they've been gradually, some have been coming back full-time return to office, some are back to hybrid, some stay completely remote. What do you think is going to be the impact of these decisions on return to office, remote, hybrid? What do you think it's going to do? What's the impact on companies in our industry?
There certainly will be an impact, and I think we're seeing the workforce begrudgingly start to accept more and more in-office time. For me, I'm never going back. You know this, Jake. They're gonna have to drag me back to an office at some point. I love working remote. It's such a good fit for my lifestyle. I get a lot done. I respect it. Not every company has the same culture that ours has, right? And so I do think that your return to office policies need to reflect your organizational culture and your organizational goals. That's a really simple thing for me to say. It's a hard thing to execute. But I anticipate we'll see more and more companies go back to less hybrid, more full in office. Given where the economy is right here and right now in 2025, I don't expect to see a large, we saw the great resignation back in COVID, right? I don't anticipate we're going to see that here. I would imagine most employees will hunker down, grin and bear it for the time being, and wait for the industry to snap back, which is what it always does.
That's right.
So I think that's probably where we are to a degree. And but I would say to employers who are considering, be really intentional about what your return to office policy looks like. Because if you have people who show up to the office and then have to get on Zoom calls with people who are in the office the following day, it deteriorates culture and starts to make people ask why. And if you have people back in the office, they should never ask why. They should know when they get there.
That's right. I mean, when companies go full RTO, I'm like, that's great, because it's going to be that much harder for you to find the top talent and attract the top talent, and you're going to have some turnover. But I do think that the change in administration and the end customer, the government folks, are going back to office because that's how the administration's put it. And I think that's also allowed a lot of companies just to go ahead and move that direction and basically blame or say that's what the customer's doing, that's what we need to do. So someday they're going to run the study. Harvard Business Review is going to run the study on share prices of publicly traded defense companies and the different policies they took and the impact on their share price, or something like that's going to happen. We'll find out what it is. Okay. So now let's shift gears. Let's think forward a little bit. We're sitting here in 25, and like I said, I think the dust is settling. Priorities are becoming clear, and I want to fast forward 3 years from now. So we're sitting in 2028, and the world always seems like it's on. If you go back 3 years ago, well, 3.5 years ago, Ukraine wasn't happening. Israel was relatively calm. Just the world was a different place 3 years ago. So let's fast forward 3 years from now. What's going on in the industry? What's going on in foreign policy? What's going on in government?
Well, hopefully we're not talking about a new front in the Pacific, right? And I think that's the thing everybody's had their eye on for the better part of a few years now, is whether or not something would go kinetic over Taiwan. It's really not in anybody's best interest to see that take place. So let's cross our fingers that doesn't also happen. You talked a little bit about AI, so we'll go over it here. AI adoption in the industry has been inconsistent, and I think that I haven't met anybody yet on any front, whether we're talking talent or business development or even just kind of back office data analytics, who raises their hand and say, yeah, we're doing it great. And my guess is 3 years from now, a lot of those AI products that are out there, the ones that are less effective will start to fade away, and then we'll start to see who the winners are. And we may even, in some sectors, we may even be seeing that right now. Not that will ever take away the need for interpersonal communication, not just in recruiting and in talent, but all across the board. I do think that as AI and tech becomes more integrated into the workflow, these are the moments, the moments you get with your supervisor, the moments you get with a hiring manager or with a recruiter will be the ones that have the most value, and that AI will just sort of supplement workflows, et cetera. 28 will also be a fun year because we'll be gearing up for another election. And it'll be really interesting to see how it'll be, hopefully, it'll be a new administration either way, right? And how the priorities will then continue to change over, and whether or not people who, we talked about the death of aid and development, whether or not that can come back in a future state. And so at 28 will be a really interesting year because there will be a lot of open road ahead of the United States. And if something doesn't go kinetic in China, then there'll be a lot of open road in front of the world. And it'll be really interesting to kind of see, the choices. You talked about the forks in the road, but that'll be a fork. 28's a fork for us, and to see which direction we go. And yeah, it'll be curious.
If you had to give one word, it can only be one word. It can be hyphenated, but it can be one word. What's a word you use to describe your gut feeling about the future of this industry?
Partnership. I'll go with partnership.
Partnership. All right. Any explanation? You're just going to give us the word.
I think that industry itself is going to have to find other ways to partner internally, a lot with small businesses, and it can't just be the standard acquisition model. Let's find something cool and buy it. Like, there will be more teaming that needs to take place out in industry, but we're also going to need to see the government partner more with industry for the correct solutions. And we've seen a lot of contracts that are written without any industry input whatsoever, and how challenging those are. And a lot of companies are going to start walking away from that type of work unless they have some input on what takes next. And I'm not talking about Lockheed and the F-35 program, but real true partnership and dialogue. And I think we need that government to industry, and even within industry too.
Awesome. I like that. We're going to put that on the board. We're going to track the partnership. We're going to track your predictions. Maybe we'll get you back on here. We'll have you back on again, but 2028, maybe we'll rerun it, see how you did. So yeah, great background on Andy. I mean, for those of you that aren't following Andy, he's got some great content. It's funny, it's quirky, it's even edgy. Lots of good career advice coming out. So follow Andy on LinkedIn, and there's lots of good stuff there. We're really happy to have you here. I've learned a lot about you today. And I think that if I look at kind of your background, and I think about the metaphor of Andy is, you got your kind of core values, you got the things that make you, and you come into this industry and you don't lose who you are, you adapt who you are. to this industry. And that's what makes this industry better. It's not a bunch of former military guys like me. It's folks from Vermont that kind of came in with a real spirit and have made this industry that much more interesting. So thanks. And thanks for being on the PTS team.
I appreciate it, Jake. Looking forward to the future.
Yeah. So to the audience, I just say this, if you're tuning in, share the word, like really take the time, pump this out, share with your friends, like, subscribe, do all those things you're supposed to do with podcast. If you got any comments or ideas, this thing is still shaping. So hit me up on LinkedIn. As you probably know, I'm always there. And make sure you're following Precision Talent Solutions on LinkedIn. Look, we're doing almost live feeds about contract awards, big moves in the industry, plus all the great roles that we're working. So make sure you're following us on LinkedIn. All right, so thanks for joining me on another episode of the Future of GovCon. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and some of the bold predictions. If you did, take a second, share it on your social media, subscribe on YouTube. If you have any ideas for future guests or topics you'd like to have covered, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always there. You can always learn more about Precision Talent Solutions at pts.careers. Look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode.